So did you guys know there's actually another version of CSGO out there, and it's actually only in China, and it's run by a company called Perfect World, who pretty much oversee the development of the game, and there's actually some surprising differences between the worldwide version of CSGO and the version that we found only in China. So today in this video, we are going to be comparing the worldwide version of CSGO versus the Chinese version of CSGO and finding out ultimately which one is better. So the biggest difference in my opinion is actually how they end up handling cheaters. So if you are aware of CSGO or you pretty much know anything about the game, then you probably know that a lot of people think that there is a huge cheating issue going on in CSGO. Now whether or not that's actually the biggest problem with CSGO is up for debate, but it's definitely a problem in the game. But with the Chinese version of this game, they've actually decided to crack down on cheating and try to make it so that literally no one is gonna want to cheat because the punishment just wouldn't be worth it. So actually in the Chinese version of the game, they use the Alipay credit system, and the Alipay credit system is directly linked to your personal identification, phone number, and your banking account. So they use some pretty big data shit, and they pretty much see your payment and your debit information to calculate your credit. And pretty much if you get caught cheating in CSGO, you're gonna pretty much need to link another Alipay account, and to do that, you pretty much need to be another person. So getting around the cheating and getting around getting banned is going to be very hard, and it's definitely way stricter than what we see in the worldwide version of the game, where pretty much you just get a VAC ban and all you have to do is go and buy the game again for $15, which isn't really that big of a deal. Honestly, I feel like this was a very smart move by Perfect World, because pretty much they're introducing Counter-Strike back to the Chinese market. As a lot of you know, it isn't very big in China. CSGO was never really that big of a game, and 1.6 seemed to always be overshadowed by other popular FPSs of the time. So when introducing CSGO to the Chinese market, they want to make sure the game is as pure as possible. And a lot of the issues that people seem to have worldwide, like I said, is running into cheaters. And if you introduce CSGO into the Chinese market and the game gets filled with cheaters, then a lot of people aren't going to be interested and the player base will die out very quickly. So introducing this Alipay credit system and making sure that people don't cheat is going to be very important to the growth of CSGO in China, and honestly I think this is one of the smartest moves that Perfect World could have made. And honestly I wish something like this was introduced to the worldwide version of the game, but honestly I highly doubt that we get anything this serious in terms of cheating. So pretty much if you're outside of China, you're pretty much just going to have to rely on ESEA and third-party services like that. The other big change that a lot of people notice and a lot of people like to point out in the Chinese version of the game is the 128-tick servers that appear in matchmaking. So if you're unaware, in the worldwide version of the game, only matchmaking servers go up to 64-tick, and 64-tick, in my opinion, isn't really what the standard should be. Most services like ESEA and csgo and third-party services like that, where people go to play more competitively, all those servers run at 128-tick, and if you want to look up the difference between a 64-tick and a 128-tick server, there are plenty of videos out on YouTube, and there are plenty of articles on the internet, and I recommend you look those up, because if I explained it, it would probably take up an entire video. But honestly, to sum it up, 128-tick is far superior to 64-tick servers, and a lot of people in the CSGO community have been asking for this regularly from Valve, and honestly a lot of people wanted to see it in matchmaking, and it just kinda never happened, and it seems like it's never going to happen. But with the launch of the Chinese version of the game, this was just a core feature, which is kinda good to see and kinda frustrating if you're someone who is outside of China. So a lot of people are probably really pissed off right now if you didn't already know that China had these 128-tick servers, and I'm gonna try to quickly explain to you why I believe at least that they have 128-tick servers and the worldwide version of the game doesn't. So if you look at services like ESEA and csgo and Face It, the reason they're able to provide 128-tick servers is because the player bases aren't very big compared to, you know, the overall game. So if you look at the overall game, the game has hundreds of thousands of players playing at once, and while if you look at something like ESEA or Face It, they possibly have only like a few thousand. So you're hosting a lot less servers, and honestly, if you do the math, it seems like it doesn't make sense for Valve to put 128-tick servers into matchmaking, because honestly, the casual player doesn't really seem to want it, and it would cost Valve a lot of money. But since Valve doesn't actually operate the Chinese version of the game, Perfect World does, Perfect World decided to make the decision to make the servers 128-tick to honestly make the game more competitive, I guess, and to honestly give overall a better experience. And honestly, the Chinese version of the game doesn't have nearly as many people playing as something like the worldwide version of of the game. If I had to guess, I would probably say the Chinese version, like ESEA Face and Sivo, probably only has thousands if tens of thousands of players, while the worldwide version of the game, like I said, has hundreds of thousands. So honestly, in this case, it could make sense that they don't have to buy a ridiculous amount of servers that are 128 tick, and they have less players, so therefore that, you know, they can actually afford it. So it makes sense in a way that the Chinese version has 128 tick servers, and it pretty much just comes down to the Chinese version has less players, and therefore it makes more sense and is more cost effective to, you know, have 128 tick servers compared to something like 64 tick that you see in the worldwide version. Honestly, it's really interesting to see Valve give the game over to Perfect World and see just some of the small differences between the worldwide version of the game and the Chinese version of the game. Honestly, I think this is a really good move for Valve, and I think it's a really good move for the game moving forward. Counter-Strike, in my opinion, can be the most popular esport out, and I think it's the most accessible for the average viewer, and I've said that in many of other videos. I think that CSGO just needs to expand into other markets, and I feel like by releasing the game and letting Perfect World do its thing in China, I feel like this is a very, 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 very good thing for the game, and I feel like this is gonna just help CSGO expand and grow more, and China is an absolutely huge market, and it's gonna be interesting to see within the next few months and possibly even the next few years to see how CSGO develops over there and to see if it can actually pick up some traction and get more popular than it is now, and it can actually hopefully get more popular than some of the MOBAs that we've seen dominate esports recently. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have any of you out there actually played the Chinese version of Counter-Strike? I only found a few differences between the normal version of the game and this version, but feel free to tell me down in the comments down below some more differences if you guys know any, or just tell me what you guys think of the Chinese version of CSGO. Do you think it's cool? Do you think it's good for Valve? Are you jealous? Tell me down in the comments down below. And if you like this video, be sure to smack that like button. And if you dislike this video for some odd reason, be sure to smack that dislike button. And if you're new, how about subscribe? But yeah, guys, this has been the Chosen One Inc. And as always, peace out.